You're listening to Real Talk Texas on 570 KLIF News and Information. Now, live in studio, your host, local real estate expert Steve Hakes.
Welcome to Real Talk Texas. I'm your host, Steve Hakes. Heard every Sunday at noon here on KLIF News and Information, AM 570. Real Talk Texas is a forum where our listeners can get real advice from real experts. You can always reach out to me directly by visiting our website, realtalktexas.com. That's realtalktexas.com. Or call me when I'm off the air at 214-643-6021. That's 214-643-6021. And let me know what kind of expert that you need, and I will connect you with that expert here in the DFW market. And today, on our show today, we're going to be introducing you to two of our experts. Garry Graham, he's our banking expert. He's the CEO with Affiliated Bank. And Geni Manning of the Geni Manning Team of Keller Williams. And she is our real estate expert for the Metroplex today. So we'll start off with our first segment. We're going to talk with Garry. And Garry, tell me a little bit about your background. I know that you were a former examiner of banks. And so how did you become CEO of a bank after that?
Well, Steve, I started off being a kid raised in New Mexico, went to college in New Mexico, but while I was in high school, I had the opportunity to work for a bank, and I had a guy mentor me back then, and so we think that's part of our heritage as Affiliated Bank also. Anyway, I worked for banks while I was in high school and while I was in college, and then while I was in college, I became a federal bank examiner through the Comptroller of the Currencies Office, and I did that from 1978 to 1985, excuse me.
So that was your background, and you were a bank examiner. And
right. Well, as a bank examiner, I worked with the OCC from 1978 to 1985, and then I was in Colorado most of that experience, and then I moved to Texas back in 1984. Then I got back into the banking business in 1986 and have been there ever since. And I helped with the conversion of Affiliated Credit Union to Affiliated Bank in 1998 and came on as the CEO at that time.
And tell me a little bit about, so Affiliated Bank at one time was a credit union. Tell me a little bit about Affiliated Bank's history.
Well, Affiliated Federal Credit Union was chartered in 1959, and anybody that knows how the credit union business works knows that you have to have a sponsor in order to be a credit union. Well, our sponsor went away on us, and that left us at a crossroads where we had to do something. We had to merge with another credit union, or we had to find some other charter option. And our directorate decided they wanted to go for the charter option. So in 1997, they started the process of converting from a federal credit union to a federal savings bank. I helped with that conversion. And then in 1998, we actually got the charter change made. Between 1998 and 2008, we looked like every other bank out there in the marketplace. And we grew from about an $8 million credit union to a $130 million bank during that size. But really, with the recession, we saw an opportunity to grow by meeting a lot more of the community needs that were going to be out in the marketplace. It was a lot of space created by the recession. So we looked at it as an opportunity. We'd raised capital. And so from the period of 1998 to 2012, we've grown to about a $300 million bank, from $130 million to $300 million.
Wow, that's great growth. And let me ask you, for our listeners out there that may not be familiar with Affiliated Bank, where are your banking locations today?
Well, we started off in Bedford with our first location, and then we moved down to Arlington with a Mid-Cities philosophy. And then with the change in our structure in 1998 and our desire to grow, we opened one in Garland. So if you really put us in a nutshell, we have basically Bedford, Arlington, Garland. We have a loan production office in Austin, and we have a full-service mortgage company housed in Fort Worth right now.
Right, and as our listeners know, I'm the National Sales Director for Affiliated Bank Mortgage, so I'm very familiar with the mortgage side of the business. And one of the things that I wanted to learn today, and I want our listeners to learn a little bit about today, and I think with internet banking and ATMs being everywhere and things like that, and we're seeing more and more banks that maybe offer the ability to do online banking. Does Affiliated Bank offer all those things as well?
Sure. Online banking does help reduce the need for the bricks and mortar, but you still have to have that. I like to characterize the difference between large banks and small banks as being, 40 years ago, the large banks traded personal contact for technology. And community banks have always maintained personal contact with their customer base. And with that, we still think that's an important element of what we do. So even though we have the online banking to create the conveniences, we still have the customer contact. You call us, you're talking to a person, not a machine.
That's great, and I think that's one of the things, especially for a small business owner, when you really need that counsel. I think sometimes of your banker to really help you make business decisions and things like that. What kind of support do you give small business owners as a community bank?
Well, we look at our presence in the market and the opportunities we're trying to serve as being several legs to a stool. So we do provide small business loans, and we've just recently obtained the ability to become an SBA lender, so we'll be in that marketplace as well. But one thing we thought was a complete vacancy in the market for community banks was the ability to do mortgage loans, and that's one need that we thought was going to be key to the community bank going forward. To be a viable community bank is the ability to do mortgages, both mortgages that go into the secondary market, Fannie Mae, FHA, and those that we could put in our own loan portfolio and help us grow and help people meet their housing needs.
If you just joined us, you're listening to Real Talk Texas on AM 570, KLIF News and Information. You're always welcome to contact me directly by reaching out to us at realtalktexas.com. That's realtalktexas.com. You're listening to Gary Graham, CEO of Affiliated Bank, located right here in the Metroplex. Gary, one of the things that I always wonder is why, and obviously we met a little while ago, and I made a decision to come to Affiliated Bank and be the national sales director. And
I'm glad you're here, Steve.
Well, I'm glad to be here, Gary. But, one of the things I wanted to do is talk a little bit about, you mentioned that you wanted to get into the residential mortgage space. And I think one of the things that it seems to me that a community bank is really focused on helping the community, hence the name. So you're focused on the local market. And one of the products that attracted me to Affiliated Bank that you offer is the one-time close. And in my relationships with builders throughout the Metroplex, one of the things I found, especially with custom home builders, is if you look at the housing starts that have happened over the last few years, they've really dropped off. And part of that, I think, is the ability for builders to be able to build a spec home and have confidence that at the end of the day that home is going to sell and it's not going to bankrupt them because they're sitting there with inventory out there. And I know that Affiliated Bank, we offer a one-time close product, which what that is it really helps the builder be confident that at the end of the construction period that person already has their loan in place. Tell me a little bit more about that, Gary.
Well, at the start when the recession started, we knew there would be a dislocation in credit in the marketplace, which there was at many levels, especially with the systemic nature of the recession. But that dislocation, that disconnect, we thought we could step in and fill a void. And we thought one of the things that would be missing would be, with the one-time close product, you have surety for the builder, but you also have surety for the homeowner that they have a home loan. And we thought we could provide that, and they can always take and refinance that loan later, or maybe modify it and send it to the secondary market at a better rate. But at least that surety of having a mortgage loan is there. So that's one of the things that we really thought was important. And we tried to get into the mortgage business for quite a while back before the recession, and then the opportunity really opened and the space opened up right after that.
Right, and Joe Barnhart is the division manager of the mortgage company, and he is my boss. And I know that there was a time, I think it was a couple years ago, 3 years ago or 4 years ago, that you decided to join up with Joe and launch that mortgage division.
Yes, I've known Joe for quite a while, and we've talked before about the opportunity of doing that. But really, everything just fell in place. The stars aligned themselves just right for it to be a good match about 3 years ago. So he came on at the end of 2008, and we hit the ground running in 2009, and really haven't looked up since.
And I've recently joined Affiliated Bank, and one of the reasons I did that, and I've been a mortgage broker and a mortgage banker, is I finally found a community bank that really thought like mortgage people. And some of the big banks, when they're working with realtors like Geni Manning, they really aren't focused in on the closing date and the time that, when people are the moving vans outside, and the acceptance of we'll get your mortgage done when we can, or when we physically can or want to, and they really don't have that customer in mind. And that's one of the things that kept me from going to a large bank. But when I found out that Joe was there, and then when I met you, Gary, and the people that are so focused on the community and making sure that the housing market is coming back and that we're delivering mortgages on a timely basis, that's really what pushed me over the edge and had me join you. After the break, we're going to talk with Geni Manning of the Geni Manning Team with Keller Williams. Geni's a real estate expert. She is homegrown here in the Dallas-Fort Worth market. She's an expert here, and we're going to talk to her a little bit about what's happening in the real estate market here locally versus what you're hearing in the national news.